So welcome everybody to this latest video on 162 Math, and in this video we'll be going over a quick topic test with a collection of exam style questions on inequalities at foundation level. Now a copy of the questions for you to have an attempt at before watching through this video is available for you to download by clicking on the link in the description, which I strongly recommend you do to see how much understanding you have of this topic. So let's get straight into this non-calculator inequalities topic test 1. So looking at the first question, it says circle the integers that satisfy 4 is less than 2n, which is less or equal to 6. So with these types of interval questions, your main priority is to always first of all try and get n by itself, or the letter in the middle by itself. So here we've got 2n. So what we need to do is to get rid of this 2, we just need to divide both the numbers by 2. So that becomes 2. Then we've got n is less or equal to 3. Then from this, what we're wanting is numbers between 2 and 3, and it can't equal 2, but it can equal 3. Now the question says circle the integers, so the only real integer it can be is going to be 3. For question 2, it says which inequality is represented by the solution. So we're looking for 2 and 6 as our two upper and lower numbers, and we're looking for the inequality next to 2 not to have a line underneath it, but the inequality next to the 6 to have a line underneath it, and that's going to be our fourth option. For question 3, it says work out the largest integer that satisfies this. So here again we want to try and get n as the subject by itself, so we divide by 2, so that becomes 9 over 2, which then becomes 4.5. So I'm looking for the biggest integer that satisfies, which is less or equal to 4.5, and that's going to be the number 4. Then for question 4, it says solve this inequality equation. So again, we solve it in exactly the same way as if that inequality was an equal sign. So the first thing I want to do is get rid of that 3, and I do that by adding 3. So 4x is greater than 20. And then I divide by 4, which then becomes x is greater than 5. Moving on to question 5, again very similar to what we did before. So we want to get x the subject, so we take away 8 first. So 5x is less or equal to 1, and then I divide by 5. So then x is less or equal to 1 over 5. And I'm going to leave it as a fraction, or you could write x is less or equal to 0.2. But do remember, this is a non-calculated paper. Moving on to question 6a. So again, we've got another interval question. So I need to get rid of the 3 and I need to get rid of the plus 1. So the first thing I need to get rid of is this plus 1. And how do I do that? Is by taking away 1 from the other two numbers. So this then becomes 6. The 1 disappears from the middle, so I'm just left with 3x, and the 13 turns to 12. Now what I then need to do is get rid of this 3. So I divide both sides by 3, or all actual sides by 3, even the middle, which then leaves me with minus 2 is less or equal to x, which is less than 4. It then says show your answer to part A on a number line. So again, I'm going to put a circle on the minus 2, a circle on the 4, and a line that joins those two circles. Now, because the inequality next to the 2 has got an equal sign, means I've just got to colour that one in. However, I don't colour the one that's on top of the 4. So moving on to question 7, we've just got to solve this double-sided equation. So I get rid of the smallest x, which is minus x, and I do that by adding x to both sides. If I do that, I end up with 3x plus 5 is less or equal to 12. Then I get rid of the 5. So I'm left with 3x is less or equal to, and that's going to be 7. And then I get rid of the 3. So that leaves me with x is less or equal to 7 over 3. And again, I'm going to leave that as a fraction. Moving on to question 8, it says to solve. So here what we need to do is just expand the brackets first. So we get 5x minus 15. And again, always try and use loops if you're not great at expanding brackets. And then again, we want to get rid of the smallest x, which is 2x. Then we've got 3x minus 15 is greater than 5. And then we take the 15 over to the other side. So that then becomes 3x is greater than 20. So x is greater than 20 over 3. And because it's not a nice number, I'm simply going to leave that as a fraction. So looking at question 9, it says that Mira writes down a whole number that satisfies where x is greater or equal to 3. Ruba writes down a whole number that satisfies x is less than 7. And they both write the same whole number, write down all the list of possible answers. So looking at Mira's, her possible numbers she can write is going to be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and that goes on forever. For Ruba's, she's looking at, or they are looking at, it's going to be 6 being the biggest, then 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, etc. And that continues to minus infinity. So then which of these numbers appear in both lists? Well, 3 does, 4 does, 5 does, and 6 does. So that's going to be our answer. So it's going to be 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now moving on to our last question, it says that Lee spent £12 making buns. He sells each bun for 80p. His target is to make a profit of more than £5. Set up and solve an inequality to work out the least number of buns he must sell to achieve his target. So looking at this, let's have a look. So we know that he's selling each bun for 80p. So that's going to be 0.80b. Now you don't have to write the 0 after the 8. That's entirely up to you. Now, for him to make at least £5 profit, if he spent £12 making the buns and he wants to make £5 profit, well then he needs to try and achieve from his sales of buns of over £17. So this is the inequality that we then need to solve. So how do we do that? Well, we take the 0.8 over to the side by dividing by 0.8. So I've got b is greater, not equal to, is greater than 17 over 0.8. Now remember, this is a non-calculator question, so we actually need to work out the integer to this. So if I multiply both the top and the bottom by 10, so I eliminate that decimal denominator rather, so that then becomes 170 over 8. Then if I divide by 2, that then becomes 85 over 4. And then divide that by 2, so that then becomes 42.5 over 2. And half of 42.5 is going to be 21.25. So B has got to be greater than 21.25. Now you can't make quarter of a bun, or can't sell a quarter of a bun. Well, actually, technically you could, but we're looking for the nearest whole number. So therefore, then the least amount of buns that Lee needs to sell to make that least £5 profit is going to be 22 buns. And there we go.